Boomers are all about money. Gen X is like, is it all about money? Millennials are like, where is the money? And Gen Z is like, what is money?
Amy Poehler absolutely nailed this. This is a true representation of how money has been declining over the past 40 or 50 years. Gen Zers, correct me if I'm wrong, they're going to work and they're getting paid direct deposit on Fridays, and as soon as the money hits the account, it just goes automatic to their bills. They don't actually touch money. A company could actually hire someone and say, we're not going to give you any money. You're going to work here for free, but we'll provide housing, a car, and 3 hot meals a day. There would be no difference. Just cut out the step of money because they never actually see their money. This is such a true representation of what we're all screaming about right now. What is going on?
What's going on is indentured servitude. Just a really tricky version. Let me explain. First, a quick breakdown on indentured servitude. An indentured servant is often associated with slavery. However, the difference between being a slave and an indentured servant is that becoming an indentured servant happens by signing an agreement called an indenture. An indenture is basically an agreement that says, hey, I'm going to work for you in exchange for food, lodging, and transportation. And in exchange, I'm basically going to be your slave. What we're seeing today is a little more tricky, though. It's a little more nasty. So we're going to call it covert indenturement. What does that mean, covert indenturement? Well, we know indenturement is an agreement between two parties that's a legally binding contract. However, a covert indenturement would be an agreement in which the true intentions of this agreement is concealed. We never have to actually agree to be indentured. We never have to agree to be a slave. However, we're forced into an agreement in which we have to work and are essentially forced into a situation in which we become an indentured servant without ever having to actually be formally indentured or forced into servitude. Now, I would suggest that covert indenturement continued well into modern history and only became less common with the establishment of labor unions and workers' rights laws. Now we're seeing a resurgence in this in their little workarounds and a system designed by the ultra-wealthy and the boomer generation to try to re-establish this system in the wealth gap. I like how George Carlin put it.
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And they're used.
The ultra-wealthy have a controlling interest in corporations that employ the majority of individuals, an increasing number of residential properties, and in oil and transportation. Their converging interests of keeping the working class subservient, manipulatable, and in debt has forced us into indentured servitude without ever realizing it until it was too late, essentially turning the working class of America into slave labor. Go watch Freddie Smith's full video too, it's really good.